Hey, this is Christian Roldan.
And Jordan Morris from the Seattle Sounders Football Club.
And you're listening to
This is Nos Odietis. This episode of Nos Odietis is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Odietis since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
Stefan Frei! The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Rui Diaz through the middle to crown it for Seattle! And now they truly can start the celebrations. It's the Sounders MLS Cup.
Nicola leaves absolutely no doubt! The Sounders rule the region!
Seattle Sounders is going good!
They've scored! They've scored! Finally!
This feels fucking awesome.
This is a tiny dog.
Is that what you young people call twerking?
And Porter says cheated!
You want to win? This is the Seattle Sounders, bro.
Welcome to another edition of Nos Odietis, sponsored by Full Pull Wines, Watson's Counter, and our subscribers. This is episode 443, and we're recording on Wednesday, November 1st, 2023. I am your host, Jeremiah Shan. Joining me today is my co-host, Aaron Campo, and our producer, Lickett. While the Sounders ran their unbeaten streak to 10 games and took a 1-0 series lead over FC Dallas in the first round playoff series, they got goals from Albert Rusnak and Jordan Morris, a 12th career shutout from Stefan Frei, and generally looked about as good as they've looked all year. I still don't quite know how to feel about all this being in a 3-game series, but I know winning your first game is a lot better than losing it. Aaron, I don't know, what do you make of all this?
I think I said this was as optimistic as I felt about the Sounders in months going into this game, and I feel even better now. I think that they completely controlled the game. I don't think that there was any question who was the better team in this one. I expected the Sounders to win this game, and they looked better than I thought they would. I think that 2-0 was probably flattering to FC Dallas. It's not agree that I can think of like a ton of clear-cut chances that the Sounders should have scored on, but I just felt like the game flow, right? Like if you were to say, like, you know, assign a percentage, I don't know, it would be 90% Sounders in that game. Dallas didn't have a whole lot in them. Sounders were in complete control. And I think especially after the second goal, the way the Sounders just completely suffocated the game was really, really encouraging.
Yeah, there was maybe a 15 or at most 20-minute stretch where Dallas seemed to be giving the Sounders some trouble, where they were having a hard time playing out of the back. During that stretch, they generated 2 pretty good looks, both of them off of pretty avoidable mistakes by the Sounders. One of them was a Jackson Reagan pass that got picked off. Another one was a João Paulo pass that got picked off both times. And the end result was Jesus Ferreira getting a decent look on goal. First one, Frei comes off his line, saves really well. Second one, Ferreira just totally skied. And really, other than those 2 chances, there was nothing that Dallas had in this game. They did get credit for a high XG chance late in the game, but I've watched the replays of this a few times, and listening to the commentary, I'm pretty sure that was offside. So it doesn't really, and in any case, ended up being a weak shot that Stefan Frei saved. But yeah, the Sounders just did not give Dallas almost anything in this one. On top of that, Dallas also looks like they may have lost Alan Velasco, who was the top player in the MLS 20 under 20 and is probably their most dynamic player. And it looks like he's got like an ACL injury on kind of a weird situation where Alex Roldan basically fell into him after getting into a tackle with Paul Arriola. But it's not looking real great for Dallas right now.
Yeah, that was a bummer of an injury to see. It's just like those freakish injuries. No injury is good, but those really freakish ones where, and especially seeing a kid crying is always brutal. But it's part of the game, I suppose. But I would not be at all shocked to see Dallas win at home. I think there's a decent chance this one comes back here. But I mean, it's easy to forget that the Sounders, at least over the course of this season, were, I think, better on a points per game basis on the road than at home.
Almost the same. They were quite better, but I think they had 27 points at home and I think 26 on the road.
Yeah,
so
I think it was like an equal number of wins away.
Yeah, I think you're right. 7 wins, I think, both away and home.
And, I suspect maybe we'll talk about this very thing on the Q&A show for our subscribers, but I think that the way the Sounders like to play, especially down the stretch here over the past month or so, really sets them up well for this game.
Yeah.
Because I just think that they don't really have to change a whole lot about their approach to approach this game in the way you'd want them to. I mean, they're not going to, they're certainly not going to pack it in, but they're also, they like to get out on the counter. They're, as we know, very solid defensively. So yeah, I mean, I think it's as optimistic as you can ever really feel in something with as much, randomness as the MLS Cup playoffs.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the defense is playing as well as it's had all year. It's defense, frankly, that has been playing at a high level all year, and it's looking really good. But the offense is creating chances again, and they aren't just sort of, fly. They feel like very repeatable type of chances. Like in this game, they were finding so much joy in that on the right wing, where it was, Christian Roldan, Josh Atencio, and Alex Roldan kept getting into that pocket and being able to put in sort of those Man City passes. And they were a little unlucky not to get a goal from one of them directly, but that was sort of how they got the penalty, which I did think was kind of funny. Nico Estevez in the post game, he's the Dallas coach, was complaining about how, I guess there was some sort of directive from IFAB about players changing their path to seek contact. But I don't know. I look at this replay. Christian Roldan is doing a smart soccer thing. He's shielding the ball and he gets kicked. He just gets kicked. Like that's going to be a penalty. I don't see how that's not a penalty. And to complain about it, and he's like, oh, and then they took the throw too far forward, and I don't know.
The way I felt at the end of that game is that Dallas was extremely frustrated and extremely gotten to.
Yes.
And I think if your coach is saying this kind of stuff after a game in which you got completely just washed,
right,
not a great sign. Like whether you think that was or was not a penalty, I think it was a pretty clear one. I completely agree with you. I think if you were whining about a throw-in,
right,
like you're done. I think it says really positive things for the Sounders about the state of mind down in Dallas. Maybe the strategy here is to, try to give his team something to hold on to, so they're not too dispirited. But man, I would not like hearing that stuff from my coach. I think if
we're talking throw-ins, where you're taking throw-ins from, like you've sort of lost the plot a little bit.
Caleb Porter in the final days in Portland kind of stuff.
Yeah. I did not have a lot of sympathy for that one. There was one other kind of funny incident that didn't get mentioned by Estevez, but it was funny seeing it in real time. And it did, I think, also speak to sort of the mindset of Dallas being gotten. Was after Jordan Morris scored, there was this big commotion up at midfield, and apparently Jackson Reagan bumped into Paul Arriola while he was going to go celebrate, and Arriola made a big meal of it. None of this was caught on the broadcast, but there is a tactical cam that catches everything that's going on. So there was video of it, and it did not. So presumably it was reviewed, and nothing happened. But it just felt like everyone was so worked up about this thing. And by the way, the goal would have counted anyway.
Right.
So it wasn't like they were appealing something to get a goal taken off. They were just like, throw a guy off the field. We just want to. It was like they were. I don't know. It was just seemed so silly.
Yeah, I definitely, like, for better or for worse, it was pretty clear that they were letting them play in this game. There were some pretty hard fouls that went against the Sounders that didn't get called, and it's like, you just have to accept that that's part of the reality of the playoffs in MLS. They just let stuff go, and
Playoff hockey.
Yeah, and the extent to which Dallas was just really begging to be bailed out was, again, I think another really positive sign for the Sounders going into the second, I guess not leg, but the second game in the series.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess it's not a leg. I hadn't really considered that, but you're right.
I guess it still works.
Yeah, game 2, second leg, either way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I certainly am hopeful the Sounders don't go to a third leg. The big drawback of this format, I think, has always been the possibility that a team could lose one game in regulation and then win 2 games in penalties in advance. And of course, that scenario is still alive and well. Although from where I'm sitting right now, I'm less worried about it than I was before.
Yeah,
but it's obviously still very much in play. So fingers crossed. Like I would almost rather lose the second game in regulation than lose it in penalties, just on principle.
Yeah, I agree. I know we differ to some degree about this playoff format. My issue was not necessarily with the 3 legs. We're going to have to not use third leg, I think, unfortunately. But it's not with the 3-game series necessarily, but I do think the penalty aspect of the 3-game series is really,
I agree with you there.
Really bad. I like 3 games best,
first to 5.
First to 5. I think that's a great system if you're going to use it all the way to the final.
I've been sort of pushing back on this idea, but I think I agree with you, because it does feel like MLS sort of wanted to have its cake and eat it too, which was having the cake was giving Apple what they wanted, which was just literally more games.
Right.
But then MLS got to eat it too by saying, like, everyone loves single elimination, so we're keeping that, but we're going to keep it for the last 3 rounds.
Right.
It feels like a sort of Frankenstein monster playoff format, and that does suck. Yeah. I agree with you.
And I think that just the penalties aspect of the 3-game series is really the cherry on top. Like,
yeah, no, you're right.
It's so yeah, I'm very hopeful that this penalties did not come into play here at all, because I think the Sounders are clearly a better team than FC Dallas. And
I do too, yeah.
And not getting out of this series because of 2 games that go to penalties would really make me hate this playoff format.
I agree with you. My feeling on the playoff format will change dramatically once that happens. If that were to happen,
a good playoff format is when my team wins, I think, is the
right. And I guess the other thing I'll say is, I think the big thing I was pushing back against is sort of like people are already insisting that this playoff format like devalues the championship, and I just sort of like roll my eyes at that one, because they've changed the format so many times. I feel like at the end of the day, usually very rarely does a team win where you feel like, they didn't really deserve to win. Whatever the format was, they didn't really deserve it.
If there ever was one, it was probably the 2016 Sounders. So
yeah, maybe, but they had to get through 2 two-legged series. They had to win a wild card game. I mean, they had to kind of go through a gauntlet to win, to get there. They had to win on the road. So, like, I don't know. I'm not super inclined to give that one away either. But yeah, you're right. Like, if there was one, maybe that was it. But there was also, I thought, a lot of really encouraging individual performances in this one as well. Maybe at the top of the list was Nuhu, who I thought, there have been times this year where he looked like a complete mess.
Yeah.
And this might have been his best game that I've seen him play for the Sounders.
Yes.
And that was before he had the assist, was sort of just the cherry on top. But I know I said this in my post that it was almost a flawless game from him, and people were coming in saying like, "Oh, I remember all these bad passes." I'll tell you, I just rewatched the game, and I'm sure he had some bad errant passes, but none of them were costly. He had a ton of like line breaking dribbles. He was just completely shut down that side of the Dallas offense. I thought he was absolutely spectacular in this one.
Absolutely. I think that if you evaluate Nuhu's performance and you want to be critical of what he does in the attacking phase of the game, you have to be honest about what position he's playing, right? And like, he's nominally a left back on the team sheet.
Right.
And I wouldn't say that like he's playing as a traditional center back. He's getting forward more often, but the things he's doing, I mean, he wasn't doing a whole lot of overlapping in this game. He was doing things in the attacking phase of the game that are beneficial with his skill set, like line breaking dribblers. He's a good dribbler, and so allowing him to do those things without having him dominate possession or be like the creating all the width on the left hand side, like that's where the Sounders get into trouble with him in the final third.
Yeah,
he wasn't doing that in this game,
and he did overlap on the assist, but that was only after Nico Ladero came in to play left wing, and he is way pinching it. Like that's by design. Like once Chu, like where Nuhu gets in trouble with his overlapping is when he's like trying to combine with Chu, and it's like just get out of his way, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean and I think that the way that the Sounders shifted after Nico did come on was a great example of how Nico can be valuable. Yep. But you do have to. I mean, you have to change the way that you're going to play the game when he comes on, and so that requires Nuhu to play, I guess, a little more traditionally as a left back. But he hadn't been in that space all game. It seemed like he kind of took Dallas by surprise by getting into that space, or they just decided it's Nuhu, we don't care what he does out there, puts in the ball of his life. Jordan Morris scores a header of all things. I mean, I think that I don't want Nuhu to take that as as proof
invitation
that
to get forward more. Yeah.
But I think if he can get forward in the ways he got forward in this game and continue playing the kind of defense he played in this game, I mean, I was starting to ask questions about whether or not Reed Baker Whiting was a better option.
I think those are reasonable questions.
If Nuhu plays like this, it's pretty clear that he deserves to be starting as long as the Sounders are going to play a system that allows him to play, play the position in this way.
Yeah. The other player who I really liked in this game, maybe unsurprisingly, was Josh Atencio, who, his numbers weren't that great. Like if you just go through and look at his, he was in a lot of duels. He didn't necessarily win a lot of duels, but his activity is so helpful. He had 5 shots. They were almost all like dangerous looks. He was getting forward a ton. He put in a couple dangerous crosses. He's just very active, especially in the back press or in the counter press. And he just provides a level of energy that I think is really, really helpful for the Sounders right now.
Yeah. I think that having that level of energy and industry in multiple areas in the pitch is really important to the way the Sounders want to play the game. Yep. And Christian brings it on the right. Atencio is bringing it in the middle. Chu in his own way is bringing it on the left. And then when Nico comes on, it's a different kind of energy that Nico brings, but it's an energy nonetheless. And I think just making Dallas deal with that everywhere is really critical, just to creating the sort of, I think, chaotic situations in the midfield that the Sounders really thrive on.
Yeah, and this having Christian out there again, he's just such a calm, a positive influence. And so like he had the penalty, but he's just constantly doing stuff to disrupt opposing offense or opposing defenses. And, I don't know if this is the most talented 11 that they're putting out, but it does feel like it's pretty clearly the most complementary 11 that they have. And, I understand, like, I think Raul Ruidiaz is going to have a role to play. They probably need to get a goal or two out of him at some point during this playoff if they're going to go on a serious run. I think Nico Ladero clearly has a role. He had a secondary assist in this one. I think he'll have a role to play too. But this to me is the starting lineup. Like the way that it lined up in this game is, it's only the second time they've actually used this lineup, this exact lineup this year. But I kind of think this is what we're going to see until something forces them to change.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you. And I think that the really important thing too is that Nico and Raul bring something totally different, and that it can be very valuable. We saw that with Nico. Nico came on, and I think part of the plan there was to take the air out of the game and just kind of dominate possession. And that's exactly what the Sounders did. I mean, we talked about it earlier. There was just this long stretch where Dallas had nothing, and they were, I mean, they completely shut down. They couldn't get the ball at all. Sounders get the second goal. There was no urgency from Dallas after that because I think they were just completely taken out of the game. And I don't think that the 11 that started the game can do that. But I think bringing Nico on and changing the shape a little bit, they can do that. Raul's a much different forward than Jordan Morris. He's not as well suited to the way the rest of the 10 other guys that are in the starting lineup are playing. But it's easy to see a situation where he is the guy you want in front of goal.
Yeah.
And the Sounders, it felt like a lot of the time earlier in the year, they didn't have any other options when Nico and Raul were on the pitch because Jordan was still on the pitch. Leo Chu was still on the pitch. And they didn't have any other, for lack of a better metaphor, they didn't have any other bullets in the chamber.
Mm-hmm.
And now they do, because they've, instead of trying to get all of the guys that we think are our best players on the pitch, they have a more cohesive 11 that works really well together. And then they have these other options that they can bring on when they need to change what they're doing.
Right. Yeah. And they have different tactical approaches that they can, unbalance defenses in various ways. They're not, I don't think this team is going to go on a juggernaut-esque run. Like, they probably aren't going to reach the heights that they reached earlier in this season. But they don't really need to, especially if they are as sound in the back as they have been. And, I would not be at all surprised. Like, at this point, I would not be at all surprised to see them go on a nice little run. But not, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves either. And I guess that's a good transition. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back and give a little bit of a preview for leg 2. You're listening to No Sudietis.
Watson's Counter wants to thank everyone for their patience, but now the wait is over. Located at 6420 24th Avenue Northwest in Ballard, they've reopened in a brand new location with the same bomb-ass coffee and the same dumbass vibes. You can still expect their classics like the gochujang fried chicken sandwich and Fruity Pebbles French toast, alongside their new soft serve program and their world-class coffee. Make sure to follow them on Instagram for all the latest and greatest.
Welcome back to Nos Arietes. So leg 2 is Saturday. Aaron, what are you expecting to see?
I mean, I'm hoping to see something a lot similar to what we saw in the first game, right? Dominant Sounders win. That would be great. I think that Dallas is going to be a little more energetic. I think the Sounders are probably going to be okay with that because I do not think Dallas has the juice to break down the Sounders team very easily. Like, they've got talent, they've got attacking talent, they've got creativity. I don't want to undersell them, but I think that if they're really if they're really going after it, they're going to leave a lot of space in behind. They're going to leave a lot of holes, and the Sounders are pretty good at taking advantage of those things. I think if my read on Dallas's mental state at the end of that game is accurate, it's not going to take a lot for them to fold like a house of cards. And so I'm kind of just hoping for them to overcommit and the Sounders to get an early goal. That's what I'd love to see. I don't expect it to be that easy. And I wouldn't be shocked if this one goes to penalties or if Dallas just snags like a 2-1 or something, or even a 1-0. I wouldn't be shocked if we come back here for game 3, but I really feel like the Sounders have a really good shot at not having to deal with game 3. I just think that they're pretty clearly a better team than FC Dallas at this point.
Yeah, and part of what gives me some confidence going into this one is, so the Sounders were in Dallas not that long ago, and they tied that game 1-1. If you remember, though, they started the game off really, really badly, and then sort of dominated the last 60 minutes or so after they made some adjustments. But that was the game where Ladero started as at the 10, and they had Rusnak and Morris playing wide in that game, and they ended up flopping Rusnak and Morris about 30 minutes into the game after Dallas scored, and Rui Diaz was playing forward that day. And basically they gave Reed Baker Whiting also started in that game, and they gave him sort of a little bit more license to get forward. He ended up putting in the the assist to Alex Rodon, actually. But I bring all this up because that was a pretty disjointed effort from the Sounders, and they were still really the better team.
Yeah.
Against, I think, effectively a first choice Dallas. The Sounders were also on a 2-week break, which, so they maybe had a little bit of rust going into that one. They were also coming off that 2-2 tie with the Timbers. So I don't know if mentally they were exactly in the best headspace, but although the Sounders are in a much better position, I guess, right now than they were in that last one. But man, I am definitely not rooting for penalties. As you probably remember, the Sounders do not have a great record in penalties.
Yeah.
I actually don't think they haven't won a shutout they haven't won a shootout since beating Toronto in 2016 in the final. They've only had 3 shootouts since then, but still, it doesn't fill me with a lot of hope.
Yeah, I mean, shootouts suck just generally as a thing to have to endure. I think in a game like this where there's not even finality to it, it's just like, okay, well, we lost the shootout, so now we have to go play at home again.
Right.
But I'm sure that's deflating, but I think you said it would have had to been earlier in the show, because of course we record the Q&A show after this one, that you'd almost rather lose the second leg outright than lose on penalties. And I think I kind of agree with that as well. But yeah, I know I don't want to relitigate the penalties thing, but it's just, it would be a really, really unsatisfying way for I think for this game to end. And then it makes you feel really queasy, I think, going into the third game, because there's a proof of concept. Dallas has gotten you to penalties and beaten you, and you can feel as confident as you want that you're the better team. If they have a blueprint, for getting the game to penalties, that's going to be in the back of your mind the whole time in the third game.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's all true. That's all very true. Another thing, though, I guess maybe I mentioned this in the first segment, but it is going to be a pretty big loss. I think it was confirmed today that Alan Velasco is going to miss this. He's going to miss a lot of time, but he's definitely not going to play in this game. And so Liam Frazier is probably the guy, I assume the guy who's going to play. That's who replaced him in this last game. And say what you will, he is not, I assume what they'll do is move Paxton Pomykal a little bit more into a more aggressive role. But that's a pretty big blow for Dallas.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen a ton of Dallas this year, but I've seen him enough to know that he's a player that concerns me. And I think that given how good the Sounders defense is, I mean, you're already really, it's an uphill battle. And so when you lose your creative engine, and I think it's fair to call him that based on what I've seen, that makes it much more difficult. And I mean, it's a bummer for FC Dallas to have to go into this game so weakened, but it's how she goes sometimes, I guess. And I think, I mean, if you're the Sounders, you have to try to take advantage of that. It's really the only thing you can do. And I think it does have to encourage you, because I think the Sounders have to feel pretty confident based on the last, 300 odd minutes or whatnot, that they can keep a team from scoring.
Yeah.
And I know we just talked about how unsatisfying penalties would be, but if you can go 0-0 and lose in penalties, maybe that's not the worst thing,
right?
For your mentality. So, but I'd obviously prefer to go 1-0 with a win. But let's win this in regulation. I would. That's my strong preference. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the most likely outcome. Like, if I were handicapping this game, I have the Sounders as favorites here. Not heavy favorites, but I feel really confident in their ability to score. I feel really confident, even more confident in their ability to prevent other teams from scoring, especially a weakened FC Dallas team, a creatively weakened FC Dallas team. So yeah, I feel good going into this one, with caveats, same ones that there always are in the playoffs.
Right. Right. Exactly. There's no such thing as a overwhelming as a predetermined outcome.
Yeah.
When it comes to the playoffs, especially.
Absolutely.
But that's all I got. I don't know. Do you have anything else you want to get into?
Not really. I'm ready for this playoff series to be over. Even though it's only been one game and that was only a couple of days ago. I'm not looking for it. I'm not looking forward to actually seeing what a 3-game series is like. Yeah, not at all. And I think the 1-game series, that's it. Whatever happens, it's over.
Right.
With this one, I think having the potential of it even dragging out is pretty agonizing. So
yeah. So I will give a plug for, we're doing a viewing party on Saturday for this game. We're going to Watson's Counter. We're charging $10 for tickets. It's a private, that's just basically to cover it being a private event. And all that money is going to go to the Sounder Heart Travel Fund so that, we could potentially cover some travel if we need to do that. But yeah, there's not a lot of tickets left, but if you want to go, I think if you go on to watsonscounter.com, they should have a link there to get tickets. Again, they're $10. Hopefully we get some people out there and we'll come say hi. Should be a good time. They're going to be serving food and drinks and should be a good time. So leave it at that. I should also say that if you want to become a subscriber of Sounder Heart and really support what we're doing, we are always looking for new subscribers. We have gotten off to a great start as far as that goes, but you guys have made this a lot more doable and sustainable. And I want to say thank you to everyone who has already done that and encourage those of you who are listening and aren't already to go ahead and subscribe. It's as cheap as $19 a year or $2 a month. So smoking deal, if I say so myself.
Agree.
And with all that said, signing off for our sponsors, Watson's Counter and Full Pull Wines. I am Jeremiah Shan, signing off for Lickett and Aaron. This is Nos Adietis. Remember, you'll never get alone.
We love you. Let's win another one!